Welcome to the Digital Transformation Conference. My name is Bob Howland. I'm excited to share with you the Dawn Foods journey as we built digital and we created e-commerce for our marketplace. I joined Dawn in February of 2019 as our first ever Chief Digital Officer. And while I've been in e-commerce for 20 years and been driving companies and doing change management for over 30 years, that doesn't compare to the Dawn story, which is actually a story that started 100 years ago. To give you some context before we jump into the digital transformation, I think it's important to know Dawn's story. Dawn Foods began 100 years ago as a donut shop in rural Michigan. The company has since grown. It's now global. Predominantly, we're in North America, and that's the part of the journey that we'll focus on for today's presentation. Dawn Foods is a bakery ingredient manufacturer and distributor. We're in 110 countries. In the United States and in North America, we have 5 manufacturing facilities and 20 distribution centers. What do we sell and who do we sell it to? Well, think of Dawn as a one-stop shop for a bakery's entire needs. You've never heard of Dawn Foods because we're business to business. But trust me, if you've eaten a donut, it was locally made by us or made with our mixes and our ingredients. So we sell 5 primary things to bakers in the United States. We sell non-bakery food items. We sell processed ingredients. Think about this as a cake mix, a donut mix. We also sell raw ingredients, whether they're nuts, sugars, flours, those kind of ingredients. We also sell anything a baker could need, whether it's a cupcake dish, a box to put the donuts in, anything they need at all to serve their customers. And how do we do that? Well, if I said it was complicated, that would be an understatement. But we're a traditional food manufacturer and distributor. We manufacture. Some of those manufactured goods go directly to large customers. Think of McDonald's or Walmart, and they go by trailer. Our manufacturing items also go into our distribution centers where they're joined by other goods, think sugar, flour, shortening. At that distribution center, those products come together, the Dawn manufactured products, as well as products from third parties. And as bakers, more generally smaller or regional players, order from Dawn Foods on a weekly and bi-weekly basis. We package that order, generally 10 to 20 items, generally in the size of a few pallets, and we put it on our own trucks and trailers, and we deliver it in routes that are pre-established to those bakers. In many cases, this is the lifeblood for that bakery, and we are their dominant provider. Now, this marketplace and this business model has been in place for, as I said, now 100 years. Dawn moved from a donut shop. A few decades later, it started becoming a manufacturer. A few decades later, it jumped into distribution. And a few decades later, it went international with a massive geographic expansion. As we sit in 2019 and 2018 and 2020, digital is a few decades later, that next massive transformation for the business. So while transformation is in our genes, digital is a whole new way of working, as you all know. Now we'll jump into the key elements of the business model transformation. I like to say 2 things to my team members and the rest of the company. One is that business model transformation, and especially digital, it's a lot less about the technology, and it's much more about the people and the business processes that are in place. The second thing, and perhaps you've heard this before as well, e-commerce exposes every wart in a business. What do I mean by that? Well, a business like Dawn is generally conducted via personal relationships at a very localized level. People are able to overcome a lack of business process, and people and relationships are able to overcome quirks in a customer's order, quirks in a customer's business, unique opportunities at a local level. When you think about e-commerce, it's a one-to-many opportunity, right? You build a website, and everybody can interact with that. But it's also democratic or community-based in that everybody interacts with that the same way. And so you strip apart, if you will, some of the relationships and localization that, if your business model is not in place, are really enabled by that localization. So let's jump into 3 things that we found with the Dawn business journey. First, we really had to break this paradigm. Today, our salespeople drive to their customers, and a typical day starts at 6 or 7 o'clock, because we all know that bakers start early as well. And so a typical salesperson jumps in their car, pre-COVID, of course, and drives to their first customer. They interact with that customer, spend 10, 15, 20 minutes, and in that interaction, they're predominantly taking their order for the week. They capture that order. They might go back to the car, check on inventory levels, whatever, but then they inject that order into our back-end system, and they drive to the next customer. Rinse and repeat, day after day, salesperson after salesperson. You get the story, right? And so with e-commerce, the movement here is to take away the process that the salespeople go through in taking the physical order and spending all that time driving around their territory. Moving customers to e-commerce, which frankly, as we know as consumers, is a more convenient, accessible way of transacting. Yes, I want my salesperson as a baker. I still want that relationship. I still want to understand what's happening in the market. But man, I do not need to spend time with that person placing my order. And so the combination here of keeping the salesperson, but now doing transactions online, means that for the customer and for Dawn Foods, we're now accelerating business growth, because we're driving conversation beyond the routine of order taking to how can we solve problems together and how can we capture market opportunities. The second key foundational piece of this is that it's all about change management, right? I mentioned earlier that the technology is the easy part. I've built e-commerce businesses for 25 to 30 organizations in my past. The technology was never, ever the sticking point. The challenge is always, how do you move mountains? How do you get an organization that's adopted one way of working to suddenly adopt a new way of working, whether it's a piece of the business or a major piece of the business? We all know that change management is really less about the organization, because organizations don't change. What changes? People. People within organizations drive change management. And what drives people to change? Leadership. Successful organizations around digital transformation have strong leaders who act with courage and conviction to set a vision, to enable the organization to go about delivering on that vision, and leaders that hold themselves and their organizations accountable to that vision. It sounds super easy, and trust me, it never is. So in the case of Dawn, we had a very embedded way of working. And one of the biggest challenges we faced was how to move the mountain and get the organization ready across a whole host of areas, get it ready for e-commerce. So in 2019, I did not write a single piece of code. Let me say that again. In 2019, I and my team did not write a single piece of code. All of our efforts were in collaborating with the regular organizations, departments, functions across the company, and enabling a vision and helping those pieces of the organization build robust business capabilities, documented centralized processes that we could then use to tap into and enable an e-commerce platform. How did we do that? It was a fascinating exercise. So we pulled a model out of the big consulting companies, and we hired a consulting firm to help us drive this framework. And we hired a single third-party consultant outside of the big consulting firm to help drive the project specifically. I co-led the project with another executive, so we had executive sponsorship, and we created a series of work streams: a pricing work stream, a product work stream, sales, manufacturing, supply chain, procurement, HR, and more. In all, we had 9 distinct work streams, staffed by 10 to 12 people, cross-functional representation, people from the field organization, the commercial organization, and our headquarters teams. Every work stream had an executive sponsor. Every work stream had a core team. And we also had an underlying support function, HR, IT, and other pieces that crossed every work stream, served as a holistic entity, and each work stream leader came together with these other support functions like IT in a 15-person core team that met every month to drive activation of projects, to analyze the ways that there were dependencies between these projects, and to do the all-important who is doing what by when. And so we had transparency for expectations across the company. It was an impressive feat for an organization that had never really operated this way. And I have to say that across 2019, we collectively moved mountains, and we really did get an organization ready for e-commerce. Some of the guiding principles here might be instructive for you. First, the efforts were substantial, and they were sustained, and they were all around value improvements. So yes, we looked to take cost out of the business, but we also looked to build fundamental business capability. Second, these were shifts in the operating capability and in our capacity to deliver to customers. One of the hallmarks of this effort was not looking at the world from within the 4 walls of Dawn Foods. The hallmark became looking at our business from an outside-in perspective. How does a customer see this aspect of our business? Product, pricing, whatever it was. How does the customer see this? And what is the interaction point between Dawn and the customer? And we tried hard to move our perspective from inside the 4 walls to that intersection point between Dawn and the customer. Next, all of this is foundational to building a digital business model. That's going to take maybe another decade or so for Dawn, as it does for any major company, because you're really challenging how do people work and really trying to get people to work in repeatable and scalable ways as opposed to an activity-based system, which is so common across all of our companies. Next, it was an enterprise-wide effort. We had ambassadorship from the top down. We had C-suite executives, myself and another person running the project. We had weekly touch points with the other executive team members and regular touch points with our CEO. The messaging from top down could not have been more clear and consistent. So we've covered the business model process, we've covered change management, and we covered the shifting paradigm around moving from an order-taking culture to an e-commerce culture. Now, I want to jump into building the e-commerce platform itself. Because after all, you can't have a digital transformation without a little bit of technology. Here's a general timeline we went through. Remember, in 2018, Dawn did not have e-commerce. We did not have online ordering. We had no digital relationship with the customer. I joined the business in early 2019, and we quickly set an ambition to build a national launch for e-commerce in the year of 2020. And the question was, how do we get there? And here's a timeline that we set up early in the process, and I'll take you through it at a high level. One of the key aspects was to establish a vision. Now, being the first ever chief digital officer in the company, I was able to come in and bring decades of e-commerce and digital experience, and quickly was able to say, here are some things that the company is doing, we should keep doing. And the flip side, here are some things the company is doing that we should frankly just stop. And we got alignment very quickly for that vision, and we kept moving. The next piece was the customer, right? The organization was coming from a perspective of building something internally that we thought the customer would want. I've been doing this for years and years, as I've said. The most important thing is to get customer input. And so we quickly put an MVP in the market. We built a beta online ordering system. We partnered with two different sets of salespeople, so we kept it fairly contained. We identified about 100 customers that were served by two different distribution centers. And so we could really control all aspects of the business in this pilot program. And we turned it on, and we listened, and we listened, and we listened. We spent a couple of months iterating on that MVP and that beta, and quickly learned that it was good enough, and that all of our efforts should be focused on the big launch in 2020 and really building a national e-commerce solution. And so we kept the pilot in market, and we kept our ears open. And for the next year, we kept listening. We then took a vision, we took this customer feedback, and we went back into the organization to reaffirm top-down validation, top-down support, all the way up to the board. And so in the summer of 2019, we held meetings with each of the board members, established a 3-year financial plan for the effort, and got affirmation. And then we were off and running. In that board meeting and in those discussions, we set across the rest of the vision and the rest of the journey that I'm going to share now. We agreed that we were going to build an e-commerce architecture from scratch. We agreed that we were going to build a digital innovation hub, and we agreed that we were going to launch in July 1st of 2020. Let me say that again. In July of 2019, we agreed to do an assessment of the landscape of the e-commerce solution providers and select a partner or partners. In July of 2019, we agreed that we would build a digital team. And in July of 2019, we announced and agreed that we would launch a year later. Again, we had no staff, we had no partners, we had no team, we had no code. And thus the journey began. We went through a very robust process with KPMG as our partner, with Gartner and Forrester providing third-party, unbiased industry information on the provider network. And we picked a series of providers. And we picked a way of operating which is relatively unique. Said differently, we did not go with a bundled solution. We got all of our contractual relationships in place through the back half of 2019. Importantly, we hired a technology leader in the Boston area and agreed to establish Boston as our foothold. In January of 2020, we started writing code. And in May, we finished the process of writing code. We tested. And then in June of 2020, we deployed. And so we went through 8 2-week sprints beginning in late January to launch an e-commerce business from scratch. The process we went through of how to do this is informing. Now think back, this is 2019, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with the term MACH, or what Gartner is now called composable commerce. In the old days of 2019 and earlier, most firms would go out to Salesforce, Oracle, Adobe, all wonderful companies with very good solutions. And they would, quote, buy a bundled package and live with the pluses and, frankly, some of the limitations and restrictions of that bundled package going forward. And frankly, they would be beholden to what technology, what releases, what features and functions were available on that platform. Early on in the vision for Dawn Foods, we decided that that was not our journey. Again, no value judgment, but we wanted something different. And different in what way? So we aspired to being nimble. We aspired to having control. We aspired to building features and functions that were relevant for our business and our customers. And lastly, One of our fundamental principles was we wanted best-in-class solutions for each piece of the puzzle. Said differently, we wanted an amazing back-end commerce tool. We wanted an amazing front-end content management system. We wanted a best-in-class product information management, or PIM, tool. Now all the big guys say they do all of those things, but candidly, it's really hard to do everything at a best-in-class level. And so we aspired to build a modular or composable e-commerce platform by picking the best-in-class solutions across the way. And we used what's now commonly called MACH, and the MACH Alliance has made a household word. We use this concept of MACH, which is all about microservices, so tiny pieces of code to enable each feature that's unique and transferable. API first. So we wanted to have systems talking to systems and making calls and web services calls in the right manner in a two-way communication loop, and calling only the data and only the information that's needed for the purpose at hand. Cloud is all the rage, of course, so we had to be cloud native and it had to be software as a service. And lastly, we wanted it to be headless. And so we really do see this dynamic where back-end engines that fuel checkout are very different than the front-end user interface that the customer or user sees. And we really want to have best-in-class in both of those arenas. And frankly, we didn't see any solution out there that had that bundled in an existing fashion. So we were very fortunate. Last fall, we built relationships with EPAM, which is a global systems integrator. We maintained our relationship with KPMG. And through that process, we also made introductions and created partnerships with amazing companies like Commerce Tools, Salsify, and Content Stack. And of course, Google and Google Cloud has been a great partner for us along the way. And we've stitched together these relationships so that they're all talking to each other. And in aggregate, this ecosystem is what is now our e-commerce platform. I mentioned earlier that a fundamental aspect of this journey for Dawn Foods was creating a digital innovation hub. Now, why build a digital innovation hub? Why not do a digital project out of your existing headquarters or your existing office? Well, I think the organization recognized early on, even before I joined, that digital was a new way of working. And it was working at a different pace with different tools and a different mindset. And I think the organization, having learned from what other leading organizations was doing, recognized that this should be dealt with differently. We shouldn't force digital to operate in the existing Dawn Foods ways, but we should rather free digital to work in a unique way that's more consistent with how digital organizations work. And so we had the benefit of that mindset. We formalized it in summer of 2019. We hired our first leader in September of 2019. And we've since built out a team of individuals in Boston that was entirely hired in 2020, most of them hired after COVID started. So in reality, I have not met most of my team members. This digital team is comprised of skill sets and roles that are fairly common for a digital organization, right? We do software development, we have tech ops, we have project managers, we have product management, which is critical to understanding what products should we build and interacting with our users to bring forth that information and translate it via user stories so that front-end developers and software engineers can go build it. Some of the vernacular we use is very, very different than the rest of the organization. We are truly an agile shop. We operate in 2-week sprints. User stories are the lifeblood. We have Kanban boards. We do epics. We track story points. And we do retrospectives. And these are not things that our enterprise IT team does. and these are not ways of working that are common or even commonplace across the rest of the organization. So to solidify this ability to work differently, we were thoughtful about locating the Digital Innovation Hub outside of headquarters. Frankly, it could have been a mile away. It could have been across the street. But we realized that the Boston digital talent pool, the ecosystem of B2B and B2C e-commerce, digital, and online companies in the Boston community makes it one of the top 10 talent markets in the entire world, and certainly one of the top 3 or 4 in the United States, rivaling markets like Austin, Silicon Valley, and due to this sheer size, New York City. And oh, by the way, I lived in Boston, so that was a deciding factor. But seriously, we built the team in Boston, and we will continue to have the team in Boston. And it's really driving new ways of working for the organization and helping us fully enable our digital journey. It's been a great story. As I mentioned, we started writing code in January. We launched in June. And along the way, we've had these great partnerships, as I mentioned earlier, and we've gotten an amazing set of press, whether it's Business Insider or Built In, Silicon Valley VCs. It's been a story that's captured the hearts and minds of other digital businesses and other manufacturing companies and B2B firms, because I think it is relatively unique, taking a 100-year-old company on a digital journey and building e-commerce from scratch in a mere 6 months. I want to share with you a few lessons learned, and at the end of the presentation, I'll be available for Q&A. First lesson learned is change management. We talked about people, process, and technology being the easy piece. So for a 100-year-old company, this change management, it is hard. It was hard. It still is hard. And it's a long time and long-term journey. And importantly, it really can't be done alone. And so one of the things that me and my team members often talk about and try to put into practice are these deep relationships that we're building with our peers across the organization. Remember, this is the first time that we've been in e-commerce, the first time we've had online. And often we forget that people who don't work with this every day and have never been in a company that's digitally enabled, there's frankly just learning that's really important to enable. And we need to all improve our digital literacy. And so we spend a lot of time on this aspect of change management and on the concept of just educating people of what we're doing and how we're doing it. Because it is our future, and it is important that we collectively go on this journey together. The second piece is that the business model transformation, in my mind, is the hardest, and it really needs an executive champion. We were fortunate in 2019 to have myself and one of my colleagues on the executive team serve in that role. Now that we've built e-commerce and we've placed it back into the business, we're fortunate to have an executive champion in the form of the president of the North America organization. Well, his knowledge of what we're doing is still coming up to speed, and we've got to partner together to work on outlining the future and delivering those results. It's essential that that partnership exists, and it's essential that we're aligned every step of the way. The third lesson learned is that e-commerce has far-reaching implications. It really takes years to get right and years to be embedded into an organization. Change isn't easy, and it doesn't happen overnight. When we launched over the summer, we knew that the tool, the platform, and our ways of working weren't entirely ready. They weren't 100% complete. But 100% complete or perfect was never our goal. Our goal was to build something that we felt great about and to get it out to our customers, and then listen to our customers and be quick and nimble with feedback we got. And we've been able to do that. I'm proud to say that while we launched at the end of June, we had our formal grand opening in July. We've already done 4 major releases. We fixed virtually all the bugs that were in the system, yet we're continuing to work and improve and optimize the system. Now, when I say the system, I'm choosing those words very carefully. The e-commerce platform works great. You come to the site, you log in, you can find product, you can place orders. All of those things are working as any e-commerce platform ought to work. The systems that I refer to really come back to point number 2. It's the business model transformation. Is our product catalog complete? It's not complete, and we've got some work to do. And then we have work to do to maintain it and keep it up to date. This is the first ever digital product catalog the company's had. And it's a great competitive differentiator to have our customers be able to see all of our products. Remember, customers in this industry order from salespeople, and therefore they really know the products they've ordered in the past and the few products that they and their salesperson talk about. But our customers have access to thousands and thousands of products. Imagine that product discovery that can take place every day. That's brand new to our organization. And we're just now building the muscle to be able to support and optimize the merchandising that needs to take place to enable the future and our vision of e-commerce. That's just one example of why this is a long-term journey and why business model transformation is so difficult. Lastly, I'd be remiss in not sharing a little bit of a plug for the team. Proud to say that in the summer of 2019, we set that vision. We put a stake in the ground that 12 months later, we would determine what platform we were going to be on. We would create alignment for how we were going to build the tool. We would hire the team, and then we would deliver. And I'm proud to say that we delivered on time, on budget, on plan, despite COVID. And very excited to say that Dawn Foods and our digital journey is off and running. I hope you've taken some kernels of wisdom from the words here. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm happy to take questions and look forward to what thoughts you have.
Joining us for a live Q&A session. I can see a few questions have come through on the chat, so if you did have anything more that you would like to put forward to Bob, do pop that in the chat. Just going to wait for Bob to come through on the system now. I can see him backstage on our event platform here, so hopefully Bob will be up and running and join the feed very shortly. For those that are joining us and didn't catch my welcome notes, a warm welcome to you this morning. Good for you to be with us. If you didn't join us yesterday, more of a welcome to you, and if you did join, I hope you enjoyed the content and the presentations, panel discussions and interviews yesterday. More of the same today. We've got a fireside chat next with Rick Lockton from the Walmart, and then Pascal Hoffman from Wells Fargo as our third presentation. Then we're into a break, and then we have a Microsoft panel session at noon. I can see Bob is with us now, I think. Bob, can you hear me?
Chris, I can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you, and welcome, Bob. Really great presentation there. And first up, congratulations. It seems like you've done a huge amount in the last 12 months, well, since July last year, over the last 18 months, and credit to you. I mean, it's been an incredibly difficult year for businesses and for any kind of transformation effort. So hats off to you and your team, and for Dawn Foods for managing to go about that the way you did.
Thanks. It's been an incredible journey, and as we keep talking about within the organization, our best days are ahead of us, and the biggest part of the journey and the hardest work is still in front of us.
Nice. Yeah. Well, that's it, isn't it? I mean, I'm really glad that you kind of drew on on some of the main messages that are kind of echoed, particularly from yesterday, and that's kind of around the people side of transformation, and that is essentially change management. A lot of kind of organizations and companies that do present on this conference series often come back to the people side of things versus the actual technology, and it's something we hear about quite a lot, and the resistance to change as well, and getting that culture balance right and creating a culture of innovation. And so it was great to hear from that point of view, and I'm really glad that you were able to kind of share more on the innovation hub side of things as well. It was a nice story, so thanks, Bob.
Excellent. Are there questions from the team, from the audience?
Yes, so there are. So I think first up, we're going to go with a question coming in from Aaron, which is due to COVID, and I think this is going back towards the start of your presentation. Due to COVID, face-to-face is now more difficult and building rapport is harder. Can e-commerce still allow for relationship building and personalized account management? So I think what Aaron's coming in on there is where you were talking about, I think pre-COVID, you replaced the sales journey a little bit and replace that with the e-commerce. In your experience, has there been kind of any resistance from your salespeople on that side, and how can e-commerce, removing that physical barrier, still allow for that relationship side of things?
Yeah, in our business, the relationship is everything, and so we never want to replace the relationship or end the relationship. We're really trying to make the act of a routine order, which typically week over week is the same.
Yeah.
And if we can make that routine order, if we can take that out of the relationship equation and make it, really put it in the hands of the customer where they can do it in their convenience wherever they want. And we're really training the sales team that let's enable that, and let's therefore make your conversation more rich, more deep, more dimensional. You have the opportunity to make sure that the order is correct, because we built the platform so that the salespeople can see exactly what customers are doing. And they have the opportunity in that weekly call, which is now more phone than in person, they have the opportunity to say, hey, Chris, I see you put these things in the order and in your cart, but did you remember X, Y, or Z? And then that's a big relationship boost, because then the customer, think, wow, my salesperson really, they've got my back. They're still engaged in my business. They reminded me of something I would have forgotten. But then the rest of the conversation can really be about, solving problems and growing the business, which at the end of the day is what the customer is really looking for. Yeah. Help me get better. And so we're really trying to make this a 1 + 1 = 3. Mm-hmm. And for customers and salespeople that understand the dynamic, it's been transformational. And there are still more people that we need to connect with, and more people that we need to win over in terms of heart and mind. But that's part of the journey, and it's a process. It takes time.
Yeah, nice. That's a good answer. Thanks, Bob. Another one in from Rick. Can you tell us a little more about the digitalization of your supply chain and the connectivity around this?
So the supply, it's probably a two-part question, right? So the supply chain in and of itself has a massive digital opportunity, right? It's a very much a labor-intensive manual process today, yeah, across most people that do this work. And we all are trying to learn about AI and data and predictive analytics to anticipate customer demand and what's happening in the marketplace. Sure. And so that's a part of our digital journey that we really didn't touch upon in today's session, but that's going on in parallel. The other part of the question may be, how does the digital platform, that customer experience online, how are we bringing to bear all that we know about supply chain, which in the case of the customer, it basically comes down to two things. Do you have the products I'm looking to buy? And when will my truck and trailer show up? Right? We all know that from the Amazon world. Yeah. Is inventory available, and you're tracking your order. And so in the B2B context, that's very, very difficult. And we have the data, and we're learning more every week and every month about the right way to bring that forth. And we look forward to having that be an integral part our digital journey going forward.
Mm-hmm. Nice. And just quickly on that, you mentioned about us as consumers, it's all about instant gratification, next day delivery, that kind of thing. Is that starting to merge into kind of the B2B world? Is there a higher expectation of, instant, wanting it now, quicker, cleaner deliveries, that kind of thing? Is the kind of the consumer world spilling into the B2B side of things, in your opinion?
I think it is. It's slowly coming in. I think our customers understand that we have distribution centers, and the product that they're getting is coming on tractor trailers and massive trucks.
Yeah.
Is there an expectation and desire for, hey, if I forgot to order something, could I call Dawn Foods and could you bring it over tomorrow? Maybe your salesperson is in the area, and you go back to the days of the pharma sales rep that has all the product in the trunk. And could that happen here?
Yeah.
The reality is much of what we sell is large packaging, right? We don't sell a bag of 1 pound of flour.
Yeah.
Our bag of flour is 50 pounds.
Yeah.
And so, the salesperson doesn't have all this product in the back of their trunk. It's pallets and pallets that customers order. And so, there might be a wish for same day delivery or next day delivery, but the practicality of most customers, they understand that that's not reasonable. Sure. And the cost to serve would have to be shared.
Yeah.
And so there is a logical way that B2B is working. Mm-hmm. I certainly hope that we can bring more and more of the Amazon-esque world into B2B.
Yeah.
But it works both ways, right? That cost to serve is something that we have to figure out together.
Yeah, definitely. No, that's a really good answer. And then another one in from Casey. What was your biggest challenge with change management at Dawn Foods?
No one's going to be surprised. The biggest challenge is people, right? We all are stuck in the ways that we work, good or bad ways of working. And so to take an organization that has never been digital, doesn't really understand the context of what it takes organizationally, forget the technology, organizationally, people working differently, people having the context. And we talk about this a lot, and it's connecting the dots.
Yeah.
And I could retitle myself, I am the chief move the dots closer together executive.
Yeah.
Right? Because people can't really see the connection points. And so I think as a leader for this kind of a transformation, it's really all about giving context to the dots and moving them closer together so that people can really understand them. And to use an old phrase, they can see the whole board, right? If you're a chess player, you really want to see the whole board. And that's really hard for people that have never been in these businesses. And so that's a lot of what I'm trying to do. And that is day in and day out, continues to be the biggest challenge.
Yeah, of course. And then you mentioned in the presentation that the majority of the team was built post-COVID. And a lot of discussion on one of our previous events earlier on in the pandemic for our UK's edition of this series was a lot of conversation around onboarding and how do you go about that, during COVID, and what digital tools and tech do you kind of use in the workplace kind of to enable that. So how did you go about onboarding, new team members, and was that a difficult process? Obviously that really falls into the bracket of that change management process, but how difficult was that, building that team without, you said you've not met them face to face, which must be, very difficult as a leader.
I still haven't met most of them face to face.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty passionate about the talent management, and I'm a firm believer that it's my job to hire people. It's not HR's job.
Yeah.
And I'm a firm believer that the onboarding process starts when you write the job description, frankly, and you need to be thoughtful about appealing to the target candidate's wishes and motivations, right? And so we're fortunate, we have this groundbreaking opportunity for people to join us in a way that might be the best job of their career, right? They're starting at the ground floor. They're starting with a, quote, well-funded, well-supported initiative, and they're going to work in a small, separate digital innovation hub where they're going to get to decide what tools do they work on, how do they want to work, and the flexibility to, if something's not working today, we switch tomorrow, right? And we've got an executive that's in the room that can say, okay, that's not working, let's do this. And that change appeals to some people, and frankly, it doesn't appeal to some people. And so the onboarding process for us really starts with writing that job description, creating awareness for the Digital Innovation Hub, and then making sure that the experience that people have when they come into the org is consistent with that vision we've set. And where we do a good job of that, the onboarding process is very smooth. And I think by and large, we've done a very good job of that. And the expectations match the experience, which at the end of the day, if you can bring a new person on board and make them feel as valued as you value them and the role they're going to play, it really is a win-win. I'd say it's not hard, but it does take a very thoughtful approach, and you really have to put yourselves in the shoes of the candidate. And I think about it a lot like when I bring a guest into my house. I really try to treat my employees as guests in my house, and I really try to make sure that the team that's leading the Innovation Hub, we work for them. And that kind of servant leadership is genuine. And I think people respond, and the onboarding process just reflects that.
Yeah, no, that's really nice to hear. And then the final question, you obviously last July set about the strategy and kind of the digital roadmap and to get where we are today. That was obviously pre-COVID when all of that was written up, strategized, ideas put down. And yet we've gone through COVID, we're still in COVID, yet you've managed to deliver on time, on budget, and everything, which is quite remarkable. How many times did you have to kind of revisit that initial strategy and kind of, adapt it or change it slightly? Or did you just go with that vision and kind of it's been tunnel vision and that's how you've achieved it? It's really interested to kind of know a little bit more about how you've actually managed to get from A to B in that time.
Right. I mean, as I said, in June of 2019, we had no e-commerce, no provider, no solution, no architecture, no code had been written, and no team. And so, it's some people can say that was a leap of faith, but I've been in businesses and we've spun up e-commerce websites in about 6 months. And because we had a pilot in the marketplace earlier in the year, we'd already gone through some of the tough learning about the two biggest challenges in e-commerce businesses. One is the plumbing, right? Connecting your ERP to your commerce platform. We knew all the problems with that. And so we walked into the project eyes wide open. The second big part of a commerce platform is the product, enabling and creating the product catalog. And again, because we had the minimally viable product and market, we had a level of awareness and understanding of what that effort was going to be that really gave us a head start. And so when we spent the back half of the year last year looking at providers and platforms and whatnot, we were very thoughtful about making sure that the solution was fit for purpose for Dawn. And then when we turned the calendar over to 2020, we had a very robust project plan. We had an agile framework in place. We had 8 two-week sprints identified. We had close to 50 developers from around the world, mostly in Eastern Europe, lined up. And we just hit the ground running. And we did not waver to that plan. And yes, we had to make tweaks on, could this be done in this sprint versus the next sprint? We had to make some waivers to, frankly, we had some people that didn't get COVID, but we had some people that had to come in and out of the project. But for the most part, we stayed true to the core team, the vision. And I would just say that because we had created the plan and we all had the right mentality to work the plan, we just had a common framework. And we relentlessly worked that plan. And good for us collectively across many organizations, we held hands and we stuck to the plan. And the results speak for themselves.
That's great. Well, Bob, thanks so much for joining us. Thanks for your presentation and for sharing that story, and for coming in live for the Q&A session. It's been a real pleasure to have you, and it's evident that the work you're doing is fab. So congrats on that, and yeah, thanks so much for being part of the event.
Thanks, Chris, to you and all the participants. Hope everybody stays well. And as I always say, onward.